Hi, everyone. My name's Dakota. I'm your host of CreatorQon. So excited to have Angie with us today.
Thank you.
Angie from Montana's BBQ and Bar. Lots to get into. But I guess first, Angie, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What's your role? What do you do over at Montana's?
Thank you so much for having me on this. It's a fun little opportunity for me.
Yeah,
So I'm
we're excited.
Angie. I'm 30 years old and I've been working in marketing in Toronto since 2018, but I have only been with Montana's since 2021. Really sort of jumped spheres, was always in marketing, but jumped from publishing to restaurant marketing in the pandemic with all the chaos that was happening.
A lot of chaos happening. Okay, so you've always been in marketing. You're in the Toronto scene, as you mentioned, since 2018. I guess is this a buzzing industry? Do you feel like this is should young people be looking at getting into, the marketing scene in Toronto? What's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think it really depends on what you're looking to work on. If you're looking agency or, very integral Canadian brands around like restaurants or banking, stuff like that, I think Toronto is great. If you're looking more, fashion, you probably want to go to like Montreal. Vancouver has its own scene happening, but for the restaurant scene in Canada, Toronto is definitely the place to be.
And so you've worked in agencies and in brands, or have you only worked on the brand side?
So I used to work for a company called St. Joseph Media, and they own a number of Canadian magazines. So Toronto Life, Fashion Magazine, Chatelaine, Flair, Maclean's, all of those brands.
Major ones, yeah.
So while I was working within them, it's sort of like an agency in the
Mhm.
company because you're touching all of those brands and
Absolutely.
reporting individually to each of them.
Exactly. So yeah, it is an agency, and now you're of course at a brand. I guess what are pros and cons of both, or what do you prefer? Like for your career, working at, the agency world or working in the brand directly?
Yeah, so actually I switched to Montana's because I wanted to see what it was like to work specifically for one brand. Because as fun as it is to work and touch multiple things, you don't have the same ownership that you do when you're on one brand. And I really wanted to experience what it was like from concept to delivery on things. So it really depends. If you want to keep things fresh every day, working that sort of agency angle will definitely do that. And you'll meet more people, but you also have more people to answer to than on a brand because there's so many more stakeholders.
Exactly. Yeah. Pros and cons.
Yeah.
So both sides. So now you're on the brand side. So I guess, is there professionally, right, in this space? I guess have you had an aha moment where you felt like, okay, I've made it. Like I get it. I know what's going on here. Or do you still feel like there's learnings, to be had?
I mean, there's always learnings. There's always going to be a little bit of that imposter syndrome of the first time you go to a commercial shoot, the first time you're, in a meeting with people that are higher up, like you have that, what am I doing here? I don't know what I'm doing. But I think there's a little aha moments throughout the way when you accomplish something or you kind of anticipate something.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm doing this right because I know what's going on and I'm feeling like I'm in the right space, like it makes sense to me. And for me, I think some of the aha moments come from feedback where you might be in your head of like, oh, am I doing this right? Or like, is my instinct on this right? And then you get that feedback of, wow, yeah, this was great. Keep doing that. Or like, oh, I didn't think of it this way from people that are higher up or you're reporting to and being able to get that feedback.
Yeah. And imposter syndrome is so prevalent. Like so
Yeah.
many people are feeling that. I guess is that something that you've kind of felt throughout your career, or it's kind of at this stage where you're like, oh, I'm getting higher up, there's more responsibility. What does that look like?
I think it has toned back a little bit, but I still get imposter syndrome all the time. I think definitely jumping into your first real job and
Sure.
you're like, wow, I'm still a kid. What am I doing here? And sometimes I feel like people still see that.
Okay.
Especially like I'm a young female professional. You can't tell today, but I'm typically very like loud and vibrant in my clothes. Like
Sure.
it's not things that you think of when you traditionally think
Typically.
of like a boardroom. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are times that I feel like, I have to compensate for how I can be perceived.
I can totally relate to that, right? And I agree and understand, yeah, as a female, as a young female, and maybe, yeah, you're not always in like, blazers and, suits, and which I do love to wear those, but sometimes I don't. So it's like, yeah, just making sure that people are still taking you with a level of seriousness.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is serious, but you can still have fun.
Yeah. It's marketing. It should be fun.
Exactly. Totally. What's an unexpected, I guess, story from your career in marketing that makes you kind of laugh or makes you kind of cringe, in the marketing world?
So while I love my brand and the people that work on it, Montana's is a meat heavy brand and I'm a vegetarian. So sometimes there's some interesting situations. And there was one time we were doing a campaign about, you get messy when you eat barbecue. And so for that, I was like, okay, I'm not going to eat it because I don't eat ribs, but I'll happily like hold that food. And I decided to participate in that. I would paint some barbecue sauce on my face.
Did it.
And, I looked kind of crazy. And I still have friends that use those photos for our like
Making
photos
fun.
of our, yeah.
Yeah, I would totally be doing the same because you gave me gold there. Like that's just if I was your friend, I'd be like, yeah, screenshot like in the group chat.
Exactly. It's like the photo of our group chat, but it's like I was committed to what we were doing and
You're committed to the brand at
yeah.
all costs. You're committed to getting it done. I love that. If you could go back in time, I guess, Angie, is there any advice that you'd give your younger self in this space as you're kind of moving up in your career? What are some things that you would say to your younger self, I guess?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to be confident in what you're doing and know what you want. Because I think, especially when I was a bit younger and starting out, I knew what I wanted, but I was like, oh, I'll never get that. So
Yeah,
I'm going to do this, this, and this, or like focus on this. But if you really put yourself into what you want and focus on doing that, you can accomplish that.
exactly.
So, yeah, it's more about the confidence to go for what you want.
Okay. No, important. And I think, yeah, everybody, talks about it. And then it's like, okay, how do we make sure we actually do this on a day to day
Yeah.
to get there? So, okay, beautiful. I want to shift a little bit and talk about like influencer strategy, brand building, all this fun stuff. Talk about like the Montana's brand in your mind. Like, what's the goal that you're trying to get across for Montana's? What do consumers or Canadians need to know about Montana's as a brand?
Yeah, I think top line is quality. I think when you think of a chain restaurant, you're always thinking what comes in frozen. They're just heating it up in the back and, they're not doing anything. And I myself was surprised starting to work on the brand because, I don't know anything about how they're making their food. But the passion that the people that make the food put into it is actually, it surprised me so much. Like, we smoke all our ribs in-house and our brisket is now all in-house smoked every night before it goes into the restaurant, and those are things that I didn't know and I think we really need to be aware of because yeah, there are instances where you're gonna get a burger patty that comes in frozen that you're gonna cook, but looking at the bigger picture and the quality is something that I was really impressed with that I think people should know about the brand.
It's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, and I think, obviously you guys are Canadian, so it's important, that people understand that, especially during this time.
During
We're
this
trying to
crazy time,
support
it's
Canada.
I've
Yeah.
gotten a lot of feedback on, why do you have an American name? It's actually
Really?
Montana's is Latin for mountains,
I didn't know that.
and the original Montana's was sort of built around like a mountain cabin vibe. So
Mm,
that's where the name comes from.
got it. It's not about Montana, the state,
No,
but that's where everybody goes.
that's where the head goes.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, okay. So for the brand, I guess when you're kind of building out your strategy to work with creators, are you looking to work with creators based off their content, based off their persona, based off their audience, based off their like what are the things that are important to you when you choose to work with a creator?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'm looking at is, where is their audience? Because we are a Canadian brand, we're found coast to coast, but we're only found in Canada. So making sure that that's a Canadian audience. And then also looking at where are they based? Because we are coast to coast, it's so important for us to show love coast to coast. And while there's so many great influencers in Ontario and BC, we don't want to forget about the Saskatchewan, the Nova Scotia, like to have that sort of coverage and development. So that would be the first thing I'm looking at. And then I'm going to start looking into the types of content that they're doing. You know, do they have a voice? Are they saying something that's going to resonate with audiences?
Yep.
And then narrow it down a little bit from there.
Go from there. Okay, cool. And even in the audience piece, let's dig into that as a bit. As you talked about audience matters, you want to understand who the demo is. I guess in your mind, do you have a percentage that you're like that you'd love to kind of move forward with? Like, hey, we're Canadian brand. If you have a certain percentage, like, do you look at it in that regard as well?
Sort of, but I think it also matters depending on following.
Okay.
I mean, a macro influencer who has, you know, 35% Canadian following, that's a huge number of Canadians following
Exactly.
them. But a
Exactly.
micro influencer, if they have a 30% Canadian following, that's not enough.
Yep. Yep.
So kind of have to gauge
It
it in that
ranges.
sense. Look at what they're doing and where they are.
Exactly. I agree. And I don't know if creators think about that enough on their side. So I think it's a good education piece because I think there are creators who go, hey, I have 10,000 followers. So I need to be paid this certain rate for my 10,000 following. But the conversation is, but only 3,000 of those people are in Canada. So actually, when the brand's pricing it out, they're pricing it out based off your 3,000 followers. I know you don't
Yeah.
maybe appreciate that, but that's the reality. So I think though, it's good to get that feedback from you that you are looking at that as well, because I think we try to educate talent about it's not just about the general topic, especially if the general following, especially if the brand isn't targeting the US market or other places,
Yeah.
right? So it is relevant. Can you walk us through, I guess, or a campaign, I guess, that you leverage creators or influencers or a piece of content that was memorable to you or a campaign overall that you really enjoyed and liked and thought did well for the brand in terms of theme?
Yeah. I definitely think last year's Rib Fest was
Okay.
huge for us.
Yep.
For context, every summer Montana's runs an all-you-can-eat Rib Fest menu,
Okay.
which is great value. It's a lot of fun. It's very popular. And I really wanted to make sure that our content was resonating specifically with an influencer's followers
Yep.
because it's so easy to put out a come and eat with me. Okay, I tried the food, and
Yep.
that's the end.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the content you see most. And while sometimes that does have its place, I mean, we wanted to have fun. I mean, it's Rib Fest. You're getting a little bit messy. You're eating until you can't move. You're like
Exactly.
you're doing these things. So really putting out, we want to make sure we're seeing content that's not just come and eat with me.
Yep.
Like make it something that your audience will enjoy, but is also authentic to you.
Exactly.
Um, and I think that's where we saw creators having a little bit more fun with what they were doing. And when it's fun for them, it's fun for the audience.
Yep. Makes
And
sense.
then you're getting a positive brand affiliation. Um, you want to see content that's fun and engaging and not just selling you something, even if the end goal is that brand awareness and sales.
For sure. And I think that's such an interesting topic too, like just the creative genius and the creative concept around the ads and making it interesting. I guess, do you like, because I think some creators don't realize how much brands are actually looking for that. They're not just looking for the come with me, da da da, la la la, lunch. Like,
Yeah.
what something, a unique storytelling. So, are you giving the talent the ability to come up with that concept, or are you kind of guiding them in your process?
I mean, there's definitely going to be an overarching brief of, you know, we want to talk about the new menu, and I
Yep.
want you to highlight that it's available for a limited time.
Yep.
Um, you know, those points of this is what the theme is,
Yep.
but then giving them outside of trying that menu and making sure you're talking about it.
Yep.
I want you to enjoy it how you would enjoy it or how you would have fun with it
Yep.
because that's what's going to do best. And I mean, I can go out and try it and post a come and eat the new menu with me, and
Exactly.
that's fine,
Yeah.
but it's not going to resonate in the same way. And
Sure.
I try to share examples of content that we've done with creators
Yeah.
that I thought was really great. It was authentic for the creator and also made sense for the brand.
Yeah.
Um, in one of those examples, there was someone who not swearing, but used language that I wouldn't typically use for the brand,
Sure.
but it was more, hockey guy talk.
Sure. Yeah.
That I think you know the video I'm talking about. So I couldn't say that, on our account, but it really makes sense for a brand like Montana's. So they're able to go and have fun and make it authentic for their audience, and try to share that content and say, this is some fun stuff people have done.
Yeah.
Make it your own. Have fun with it.
Exactly. Totally. And I know, yeah, the reel you're talking about, Dale Z. Aiden, and it
Yeah.
was a great piece of content. And the reality is it aligns well to, as you said, his audience. It hits on the brand objectives, but it's not how the brand would talk.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing of leveraging third parties because they can say things that you wouldn't in their
Yeah.
way. So yeah, agreed. And I know, that content did really well. So no, that's great. I guess what advice would you have for creators of things that they should not be doing if they want to work with brands, right? Like in one of, not necessarily Montana's, but brands in generally, like what advice would you give them of things they should not be doing
Not be doing.
and or things they should be doing if they want to get
Yeah.
your attention?
I mean, I always have to look at it through the lens of my brand. I
Yeah.
mean, so posting content that is contentious
Okay.
in a lot of ways. So I'm thinking in terms of like particularly political.
Yeah.
Um, and this is coming from
For sure. For
the
sure.
brand side. Like I myself
Sure.
post a lot of political content.
Yeah.
But in a creator space, you are thinking this is your job.
Yeah.
So I don't want to alienate part of my audience by associating with you.
For sure. For sure.
So I want to make sure it's more generic,
Yeah.
in that way.
Yeah.
The same with like foul language. Like again, personally, I'm fine with it, but
Yeah.
if I'm associating from a brand perspective, I don't want someone to see that and think of my brand.
Totally. Yeah.
So keeping your personality, because obviously people are following you for your personality and what you're bringing to the table,
Yeah.
but thinking of it through the lens of, would an advertiser want this?
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. And it's that balance too, right? Because people are like, okay, they want to be themselves, but yes, you have to be yourself, but you also have to be cognizant of if you are trying to get brands to use you for mini commercials, so to speak,
Yeah.
then your reputation and persona has to align to what makes sense for them. Or you won't partner, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
But yeah, every brand is of course different and it needs to make sense. I guess on your side, when working again, like with creators from and you're in the food space, I guess how important is it for them to show the food, eat the food, do it in an appetizing way? Like how important is this to you as a food brand?
I mean, that is 60% of it.
Okay.
I mean, you're coming to Montana's to eat.
Yeah.
So we want to be able to say, this is the great food we enjoyed.
Yeah.
And show it in an appetizing way.
Yeah.
But I think the other 40% is really, it's a fun space. I mean, if you've not been to Montana's, you can draw on the tables. There's always hockey games and different games on the TVs, For birthdays, there's a lot of like singing and it's loud. And so part of going is the atmosphere and the ambience. And I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean, filming a booth. It means filming the experience.
Yeah. Not only filming the food, but also the experience overall is important. Okay. And I guess, obviously, yeah, Montana's is a massive, Canadian brand. As you mentioned, coast to coast to coast across the board. Do you guys have different strategies depending on what province or area you're targeting from a messaging perspective? Or is it kind of the core message overall and you don't really veer from that?
I mean, from us, I'm on the central marketing team, so we're really looking at a national level.
Okay.
Because, the commercials, the social, all of that is going to be coming from our main brand account.
Okay.
But I also work individually with locations that are looking to do local marketing, because that is hugely important because our restaurants are franchised.
Okay.
So they're individually owned and operated, so they need to make sure that they're making people aware of that. So even if they're serving the Montana's food that's available nationally, they're doing their own thing. Um, so there are times that that comes into play, or different restaurants will do different sponsorships. We have a location in Guelph that works closely with the University of Guelph and sponsors some of their teams. So it's supporting that, but from the national perspective, we're looking more coast to coast what we're able to do and making sure that any of the messages aren't going to leave someone out because they're in a remote market.
That's the challenge, I guess, with the brands that are coast to coast and that are franchise owned. There's pros and cons to that,
Yeah.
business model, right? But the reality is, that's what you guys are doing. And I think it's, I mean, based off of overarching, the brand messages are pretty clear. I feel like people are aware. I think the Montana's name story was funny because I didn't know that. But absolutely. And it's patio season. So people got to get out there. Like, well,
Yeah.
patio season.
Well, we also just launched a new cocktail menu yesterday.
Oh, great. Yes,
So
love that.
perfect time for patio season. I'm loving it because now there's a margarita and a pina colada on there, and I'm like, I'm ready. I'm here for it.
Let's go. Let's go. Is that the new drink menu that you're talking about? Or
Yeah, yeah. There's a bunch of new cocktails, including the Crown Royal Blackberry Smash, which is very
okay.
good.
Okay.
Um, but because we had really condensed drinks before and we've expanded it, but perfect
I
time
love,
for patio season.
okay. Exciting. I want to play some really quick this or that with you. I'm going to switch some things up on the creator content side. I want to hear from you. So, Instagram Reels or TikToks for the brand?
For the brand, sadly, it's going to be Instagram Reels, but in my heart, it's TikTok.
Okay. Influencer, content or in-house shoot content?
Depends on what we're marketing. I love seeing the creative coming from the creators,
Okay.
but I like being there and shooting content on my own as well.
Okay. Um, long-term partnerships with creators or kind of one-time campaigns? What do you mainly?
That I think is really market specific.
Okay. Okay.
So somewhere like Ontario or Vancouver, there's so many creators
Yeah.
that we want to change it up and reach new audiences.
Yeah.
But, in the Fort McMurrays, Charlottetowns, you might only have one creator and they might really be influential in that space. So
Got
I
it.
think that that's a better place to have that continued partnership.
Okay. Okay. And I guess, let's talk about your favorite Montana's menu item.
My
What should
favorite
that
Montana's, everyone's gonna kill me, but it's the apple pecan harvest salad.
I love that you said that. Mine are the ribs. Mine are the ribs. So, yay. Okay.
That's
Well,
fair. I just love a goat cheese. So
I love that. Oh my God. Very authentic to you. You're being
yeah.
yourself. This is important. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much, Angie, for joining us on CreatorCon. So glad we got to learn a little more about you, the brand. This was great insight. And yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Yay. Oh my God. She'll cut it, but that was so good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's really good to get that even, about your career too, kind of at the beginning, because I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of young, creator talent too, who they're not going to have a million followers potentially. They're not going to get there. So they want to kind of get into the ecosystem or get into the space somehow, but not sure. So I think that's really good, insight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. It's
Of
fun to
course.
chat and do different things.